You ever heard of a road that leads to the afterlife?
What? No, why?
Because I think I found it, and it's in my grandma's backyard.
Stop, that's creepy as hell.
She showed me something last night, something I shouldn't have seen.
Okay, now you gotta tell me everything.
I came to visit my grandmother last Monday. I didn't know her very well, as I grew up in a different state. I would occasionally see her at Christmas or Thanksgiving, but she wasn't the kind of doting grandmother children naturally gravitate to. There was always a detachment to her that only grew over time. Now, I didn't really want to spend this year's vacation days in the middle of nowhere, North Carolina, with an old lady I barely knew, but my parents insisted that she was terribly lonely. They said a week in the company of her granddaughter would lift her spirits. The first few days went by uneventfully. Grandma lives in a one-story house in the sleepy little town of Millhaven. The house is cozy, with lace curtains, flowery wallpaper, and a lingering smell of old age. There is a pleasant garden, its most remarkable feature, a small creek gurgling past the back of the house. The property sits on Hell's Road, a long road that cuts straight through town. There isn't much to do in Millhaven, in or outside the house. I missed my vibrant life as an archaeology researcher in Los Angeles. Academics have a reputation for being dull, but I promise, I'm not. My days are full of activity. I teach, attend conferences, go for drinks, visit museums and concerts, etc. In Millhaven, I just sat around. Conversations with Grandma were tough. She is one of those old people who have lost interest in the world. They spend the day waiting for night to fall. They go to sleep, wake up, repeat. Now that I know what I know, I think I understand why. I told myself that my physical presence alone must have comforted her somehow, but I started to feel guilty that she could see how bored I was. So this morning, at the breakfast table, I decided to ask her questions about herself. That might get her to talk more. Grandma, how long have you been living in Millhaven? As long as I can remember, dear. Do you like it here? Life runs its course in Millhaven, like it does anywhere else. Why is this street called Hell's Road? For the first time, Grandma's eyes glinted. Oh, I'm glad you asked. It's an interesting story. Legend goes that there is a passageway to the afterlife somewhere along this road. A passageway to the afterlife? According to the legend, there are two ways to know what happens after we die. One is death itself. We will all take that path sooner or later. The other way is a special door that can be opened by those who are still alive. I was fascinated. Is it true? Grandma coughed out a laugh. She probably hadn't laughed in a very long time. I'm not saying I believe it, I added quickly. I just mean that behind every legend there is a grain of truth. And you want to find it? Grandma asked, almost defiantly. Sure, I responded. Maybe I can help you? With renewed energy, she led me to her bedroom. She started rummaging through a drawer full of linen. The lavender and naphthalene smell wafting out of the drawer was almost nauseating. Oh, here it is, she said triumphantly as she pulled out a document in a transparent plastic folder. I used to volunteer at the local historical museum. We eventually had to shut it down because no one came to visit it. So we brought the items home. She placed the document in my hands with an odd smile. I ran my eyes over the page. It seemed ancient. We could never figure it out. She tilted her head to one side. Maybe you can, since you're so young and full of life. She chuckled and scurried away. This was the jolliest I had seen her in my entire life. I gently pulled the page out of the folder. It looked like an authentic piece of rag paper, the kind that was used in colonial America in the 1600s. Excitement rushed through me. This was getting very interesting. As part of my archaeology training, I studied paleography. I am pretty good at deciphering old texts. It took a while, but eventually I made out every word. There was a paragraph in English that went something like this. I traveled to this faraway land to share the good news with the Indians. I wanted them to know our Savior, so they too would partake in the joys of paradise. I was only a fool. The knowledge they hold runs infinitely deeper than ours. They have opened a passageway to what lies beyond. Only men of strong will should attempt to find the door. If you open the door, unfortunate soul, only look once. Hearken my words. Only look once. Underneath it was a sentence in a strange language. Moi pepesa etwi noas okao. I had no idea what it meant, but given the context, I assumed it was a Native American language. I texted my friend Wendy, a researcher in Native American history. Me. Do you know what tribe lived in modern Millhaven, North Carolina in the 1600s? Wendy. It would have been the Carolina Algonquians, the same who lived on Roanoke Island? Me. Roanoke Island of the Lost Colony legend? Wendy. That one, where an entire settlement of English settlers disappeared into thin air. Me. Damn, could this be their language? I sent her a photo of the strange sentence. Wendy, where did you find it? Me. A missionary's journal, I think. Wendy. It could be Carolina Algonquian, but it's an extinct language. Me. There's no way to translate it? Wendy. Well, it was translated many centuries ago. Fragments of a dictionary have survived. I know someone who studies extinct Native American languages. I can check with him. While I waited for Wendy to get back to me, I walked the whole length of Hell's Road, looking for some kind of clue. I didn't have much to go on. Millhaven is the most generic small town you could think of. Houses are few and far apart, most of them built in the past 50 years or so. I eventually passed by an antique shop. Frankly, it looked more like a junk-filled garage, but I figured the owner would be old and somewhat interested in the past. Indeed, the shop was run by an ancient man who wore suspenders and smelled of tobacco. I'm researching a local legend, I told him, about a door to the afterlife. It's supposed to be located somewhere along Hell's Road, the old man laughed. Yeah, I've heard of the legend. It's a crock of shit. Come on, young lady, find yourself something better to do. Next, I knocked on the door of the church. I figured the priest might know something about spiritual stories. As soon as I mentioned what I was looking for, he slammed the door in my face. I conclude that people in Millhaven were neither friendly nor curious. Finally, I received a text from Wendy. His linguist acquaintance was able to approximate a translation. Based on the few known words of Carolina Algonquian, Moi pepesa etwi noas okeok likely meant red butterfly between the two rivers. Not very clear, but at least now I had something to go on. I pulled up Google Maps. It showed only one flowing body of water in Millhaven, the creek that ran past Grandma's house. Where was the second river? Was it a metaphorical river? I had to consider the possibility of a translation error as well. Then it hit me. There was a long, narrow dip in the middle of Grandma's garden, like a shallow ditch. I ran back home to inspect it. Sure enough, the dip appeared to be a dried, grass-covered riverbed flowing right into the creek. Grandma's house stood at the ancient crossing of two rivers. Now, what about the red butterfly? I didn't know what to look for, so I just searched. I scoured every inch of the garden like a hound. Grandma had stayed inside the whole day, ignoring me. but I did notice her wrinkled face once, observing me intently through a laced curtain. When night fell, I continued my research indoors, skipping dinner. I was hungry and sore from the long walk, but I could not stop. I was potentially uncovering a previously unknown piece of Native American history. This could launch my archaeology career. Right after dinner time, as usual, Grandma changed into her long white nightgown and headed to bed. Before she closed her bedroom door, I asked, "Grandma, I know this is a weird question, but do you know if there is a red butterfly in the house?" Grandma's face contorted into something resembling either a grimace or a twisted smile. I'm not sure which one it was. A red butterfly? There used to be lots of beautiful red butterflies around here during the summer. Not so much anymore. I didn't mean a live butterfly. A dead butterfly? I'm actually not sure. Does this have something to do with the document I showed you? Yes, I made some interesting progress with it. I'm afraid I can't help you, but remember the words of St. Matthew. Ask, and it will be given to you. Seek, and you will find. Knock, and the door will be opened to you. I didn't think you were so religious, Grandma. She chuckled. I am not. And she disappeared inside the room. That night, I could barely sleep. I kept tossing and turning, thinking of the red butterfly between the two rivers. When morning came, I continued my search, focusing on the house this time. There was one place I hadn't searched yet, the basement. I found the key in Grandma's nightstand drawer. The door creaked as I pushed it open. A damp, earthy smell hit me in the face. The air was cooler, heavier. I pointed my phone's flashlight around. For the most part, it was what you'd expect from an old woman's basement. Boxes, broken furniture, dust. But then I noticed something strange at the far wall. A set of carvings, almost hidden behind some old shelves. I moved the junk aside and froze. It was a carving of a large butterfly. The shape had been cut deeply into the concrete wall, painted over in dark red pigment that had almost faded with time. I touched the butterfly with my fingers. The wall was colder than the air. At first, nothing happened. But then I noticed the faint outline of a rectangular panel around it. Like a hidden door, my heart hammered as I pressed against it. The panel shifted. A hidden corridor yawned open. I can't describe how wrong it felt. It wasn't just dark inside. It was complete blackness, like the air itself didn't want light. Still, I stepped in. The narrow corridor was lined with stones, older than the house itself. My footsteps echoed strangely, as if I was walking through a space that didn't belong here. Finally, I reached another door. Wooden, ancient, its surface covered in strange carvings and spirals that twisted in impossible ways. And right in the middle, carved deeply, was that same red butterfly. The words of the missionary burned in my head. Only look once. My hand trembled as I pushed the door open. It didn't creak. It didn't resist. It just opened. And beyond it was nothing. Not darkness, not emptiness, nothing. A void so absolute that it felt like my thoughts were being pulled into it. My flashlight beam didn't penetrate it. My breath fogged at the threshold. I felt the air shift, like something on the other side had noticed me. I leaned forward. Against every instinct screaming in my body, I looked inside. For a second, I saw nothing. Then movement. Shadows writhing, shapes folding into each other, and eyes. Dozens of them, hundreds. All opening at once, staring back at me from the abyss. A whisper crawled into my mind. A language I couldn't understand but somehow felt older than the earth. I stumbled back, gasping, and slammed the door shut. The carvings pulsed faintly red before fading to stillness. I stood there shaking, realizing what I had just done. I don't know how long I stood frozen in that basement, my hand pressed against the door, my breath coming in shaky bursts. Eventually, I forced myself back upstairs. Grandma was awake. She was standing in the hallway, her white nightgown hanging loose, her eyes fixed on me. "You found it," she whispered. I opened my mouth, but no sound came out. Her expression was unreadable, part pride, part sorrow. Then, without another word, she turned and shuffled back into her room, closing the door behind her. That was the last time I saw her, because when I woke up the next morning, her bedroom was empty. The bed was perfectly made, the curtains drawn, no sign she'd ever been there. I searched the house. Nothing. No note, no trace, no grandma. It was like she'd vanished. And now I'm here, writing this, my phone battery at 15%, my hands still trembling. I don't know if I opened the passage to the afterlife. I don't know if I let something out, or if I trapped myself in. All I know is that when I close my eyes, I still see them. Those eyes in the dark, watching, waiting.
What the hell did I just read? Tell me you're joking. You opened the door?
I didn't mean to. I thought it was just a legend.
Dude, no. You saw something? What the fuck were the eyes?
They were real. They looked back at me. I can still feel them.
Stop. I'm literally shaking right now. Where's your grandma?
Gone. Just gone.
You need to get out of that house, like now.
It doesn't matter anymore. I think the door's still open.
Wait, what do you mean?
They're here.